Hello, I'm Rebecca Smithorn, cover conductor and lecturer with the National Philharmonic, and welcome to Composers in Crisis. In response to COVID-19, we're going to talk about composers whose lives and art were not just disrupted, but actually transformed by times of global crisis. And we're going to start by talking about the French composer Maurice Ravel, because Ravel lived through both the First World War and the Spanish flu epidemic. Now, Ravel is 39 years old when Germany declares war on France. And when that happens, he has a very tough decision to make. He's exempt from military service because of his fragile health. But when he sees his friends risking their lives at the battlefield, he wants to try to enlist again as a matter of conscience. But that means leaving behind his mother, who is very old, widowed, and not in good health. And this decision leaves him in anguish. He writes to a friend, "If I leave my poor old mama, it would surely kill her. Moreover, France isn't waiting for me in order to be saved." But that's all rationalization, and I feel it falling apart from hour to hour. I'm working, but suddenly I find myself sobbing over my sharps and flats. And against the advice of everyone he knows, he starts an 8-month application process to enlist and fight for France. In the meantime, Paris shuts down. Blackouts begin at 8 o'clock every night. All of the shops and theaters are closed. The economy freezes. A few restaurants are allowed to stay open, but they are only allowed to serve 2-course meals, which is about as close to carry-out only as 1914 Paris can get. After a very long wait, Ravel goes to the front at Verdun as a truck driver. And when he gets there, he writes, "I'm far away from Paris and far away from music. I'm a soldier dressed in goatskin with helmet and gas mask who drives on forbidding roads into the midst of the gigantic struggle." Now, some days Ravel has incredibly difficult work to do, driving loads that are way too heavy for his truck over roads that are barely roads. And on other days, he is painfully bored, sitting around waiting for truck repairs. And he starts to get disillusioned and frustrated, not just by the tedious work, but by an emerging xenophobia and nationalism that he sees even within his own professional circles. He gets this letter inviting him to join the National League for the Defense of French Music. And the primary missions of this league are a ban on the music of all living German and Austrian composers, and the promotion of French composers above all others. Ravel responds like this: "It would be dangerous if French composers were to systematically ignore the works of their foreign counterparts and thus become a kind of nationalist clique. It matters little to me that Mr. Schoenberg is an Austrian. He is nonetheless a musician of the highest worth. What is more, I am delighted that Messrs. Bartók and Kodály and their disciples are Hungarian, and that they show this in their works with such relish. I do not believe that it is necessary to make all French music predominate in France or to spread it abroad. As you can see, gentlemen, my opinions differ from yours in numerous ways, so much so that I cannot permit myself the honor of joining you." And Ravel took no small professional risk. In writing this, the League actually responded and hinted that they would publish his refusal as propaganda. But luckily for Ravel and for France's cultural life, the League's efforts ultimately failed. Unfortunately for Ravel, his worst was still ahead of him. He gets dysentery while he's at the front, and as he's recovering, he learns that his mother has died back in Paris. He gets a leave of absence, and he goes home very sick and very sad. And it doesn't stop there. For nearly 2 years, he suffers from depression, insomnia, difficulty breathing, and fever. His friends ask if he's caught the Spanish flu, and he says he doesn't know. All he knows is that he's barely able to put on his own slippers in the morning. It's spring of 1919 before he's even able to leave the house again. But when he does, he completes some of his most famous works like Bolero and La Valse, He tours all over the place as a conductor and concert pianist in a booming post-war art scene. Ravel really thrives after this period of crisis, and his works become richer and a little more human. And that's what we're going to talk about next. So stay tuned, because in our next video, I'm going to recommend some Ravel to add to your stay home playlist.